Hi there, welcome back to your favorite deep dive show on stories contemporary and consequential for India. This week, a lot happened from the announcement of India-US trade deal on foreign policy front to an unprecedented breach of convention when Prime Minister Narendra Modi was not allowed to speak in the motion of thanks to the President's address in Parliament. But those are news stories covered and dissected in detail. I focus on three topics that were big but went under the radar of news cycle. 1. China has come out of diplomatic hibernation courtesy a mercurial Donald Trump. January saw almost a dozen world leaders queue up before Xi Jinping for a shake hand and some deals. Let's look at the consequences. 2. India's big data sovereignty move happened through the budget this week. The rest of the world is also pivoting to secure its digital territories from an increasingly unpredictable American online hegemony. We go deeper. And finally, 3 weeks after elections, India's financial capital, Mumbai, is yet to get a mayor. Is it time for our metros to have a New York-style mayoral contests with the mayor not just a ceremonial first citizen, but the real chief executive of the city? Let's get going. It's been 3 weeks since elections were held for the Brihan Mumbai Municipal Corporation, the BMC, and India's financial capital, Mumbai, is still without a mayor. Actually, does not make a difference, because as things stand today, a mayor is mere figurehead. Governance does not stall in the absence of the city's first citizen. India's mayors are denied even basic executive functions. They have no say in planning for the city, budgeting or hiring, or supervising the bureaucracy. That job is done by the municipal commissioner reporting to the state capital. Even the theoretical powers that were devolved to mayors of municipal presidents as part of the 74th Amendment on Urban Local Bodies in 1994 have in practice stayed with the officers. Our cities are governed by a transferable set of bureaucrats who have no bonding or emotional connect with the place they work and live in. They do not call the city their home, and so are not possessed with making it a success. That perhaps is one reason why urban India is a morass that most of our cities are. Let it be said, most towns beyond the Indores and Agras are living hellholes where civic degeneration is cladded with non-existent accountability. Even Indore failed so spectacularly as we saw last month with the water contamination story. Has time come, hence, to fix one key aspect of our municipal governance, the issue of who leads our cities, who is the chief executive, where the buck stops? For sure, fixing the leadership question is not going to be the panacea of all that ails India's urban governance. But with a mayor as CEO, citizens would know where the buck stops, and the bureaucracy would know they can be held accountable. How many of us know that Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru was once the mayor or the president of the municipality of Allahabad from 1923 to 1925, or Sardar Patel was the mayor of Ahmedabad for 4 years from 1924 to 1928, and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, the mayor of then Kolkata in 1930. One cannot imagine those freedom stalwarts subordinating themselves to a junior bureaucrat, even if from the ICS. Globally, New York has had famous mayors, from Fiorello LaGuardia during the Great Depression years, to Rudy Giuliani during the 9/11 emergency, to Michael Bloomberg a decade ago. Even the latest one, Zoran Mamdani, has hit headlines for his ideological reels and Trump baiting. Brazil had architect Jaime Lerner putting together the world's first bus rapid transport system as mayor of Curitiba in the 1970s. Or Japan had Yuriko Koike, who helmed Tokyo during the 2020 Olympics. Apart from being strong, achievement-oriented personalities, all these names were all backed by long tenures and enormous authority at their command to convert their vision into reality. That's the reason, perhaps, a strong mayor with extensive executive powers is the most followed model in much of Europe and Americas. There's a reason why in the developed world there's a preponderance of the mayor serving as the CEO of the city. Apart from the veneer of decentralized democracy that it gives to the third tier of governance, it serves the more important function of having a linchpin where the buck stops. India, as we know, is a different story. Madhya Pradesh is the only state in the country that has constitutional but limited devolution of executive powers to the mayor or municipality president. Rest of the country has mayors as rubber stamps of parties in power with a nexus of corporators or councillors and the contractor ecosystem holding urban governance to ransom. The structure of governance itself lends to a messy multiplicity of authorities. Look at a city like Bengaluru, for example. While the municipal body has limited mandate over solid waste management, roads, street lights, municipal markets, primary education and health services, etc., water supply is handed to Water Supply and Sewerage Board. Land use and planning comes under Land Development Authority. City buses under another body. Then there's an independent authority for slum areas development, an independent company that runs the metro. It's a mesh of unconnected, disjointed bureaucracies that work to keep India's Silicon Valley going or drowning in rains. Make your pick. This exact same story gets repeated across the country. No wonder urban governance is in deep mess, where more often than not, left hand does not know what the right is doing. This functional malady is compounded by fiscal emasculation, which the 16th Finance Commission has tried to retrieve, but that will take time. India's 2047 Viksit Bharat vision needs Viksit cities and metros which can stand on their feet. We are targeting to host the 2036 Olympics. There's this little-known aspect of Olympics. They are hosted by cities and not national governments. That's why you have Los Angeles or Munich or Tokyo Olympics and not American or German or Japanese Olympics. And that's why we might have Ahmedabad Olympics, not India Olympics. Cities contribute over 65% of India's GDP, and that's where 1/3 of India lives. If we follow the mayor and council system with a directly elected mayor in at least top 20 metros of India, then some amelioration of the situation could be possible. There would be sons and daughters of the cities with their stakes in the long-term progress of their hometown. And in the bargain, India would be getting a big talent pool trained in good governance for national leadership. Worth a try. Moving on to the next one. January saw a dozen-odd world leaders make a beeline for Beijing. The nations ranged from Uruguay in Latin America to South Korea in the Far East. But guess what? There was a commonality. They're all former allies of the United States. Take that bit about being former allies in jest. These are allies, of course, strong ones, and would remain culturally, geopolitically, and geoeconomically pivoted to Uncle Sam for a long time to come. Let's run the list with pictures of the respective visiting heads of governments with Xi Jinping. President Emmanuel Macron of France, Prime Minister Mark Carney of Canada, Keir Starmer of the United Kingdom, President Lee Jae-myung of South Korea, Alexander Stubb of Finland, Michael Martin, the Prime Minister of Ireland, Johan Vadeful, the Foreign Minister of Germany. He was prepping for his Chancellor Friedrich Merz's visit to Beijing this month. President Orsi of Uruguay. If diplomacy is about optics, then Xi Jinping and his area of influence has ballooned this January. These pictures of the Beijing pit stop are evidence that there's a serious realignment happening of geopolitical forces that can leave America searching for friends. Macron got the best access of them all. Xi accompanied the French president to Sichuan on a tourist visit, a privilege extended to a few. No American president has got this in recent memory. Prime Minister Modi, of course, was taken to his hometown Xi'an by Xi back in 2015. Macron carried 40 French CEOs with him in his entourage. Though only a couple of deals were signed, he did make a point, to the Americans, that is. German Foreign Minister Johann Vadeful followed, and then Keir Starmer was next. Though little subdued, even embarrassing on optics, with Starmer having left alone with a tourist guide to wander through the Forbidden City on his own, the British Prime Minister cut some substantial business deals, including Chinese automaker Chery announcing to headquarter its European operations in Liverpool, and Lububu doll maker PopMart setting up its headquarters in London and not mainland Europe. The Chinese sweetened the deal further by halving the duties on scotch and whiskies for the Brits, even as British pharma giant AstraZeneca landed drug deals worth Euro 15 billion for the Chinese market. Mark Carney of Canada also trooped down to Beijing before swinging by Davos for that famous address, which is now being billed as the present equivalent of the Iron Curtain speech in terms of its geopolitical significance. It is the most open acknowledgement yet of the fracture in the transatlantic alliance, ironically enunciated by Canada more strongly than mainland Europe. Just a short clip of Carney's Davos address here.
Middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. But I'd also say that great powers can afford for now to go it alone. They have the market size, the military capacity, and the leverage to dictate terms. Middle powers do not. But when we only negotiate bilaterally with a hegemon, we negotiate from weakness. We accept what's offered. We compete with each other to be the most accommodating. This is not sovereignty. It's the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination.
President Trump threatened Canada with punitive 100% tariffs if Ottawa cut a trade deal with Beijing. But as if to rub it in, Carney ticked off Trump from inside the House of Commons.
Canada and the United States have built a remarkable partnership in the economy, in security, and in rich cultural exchange. But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian.
A Financial Times report gave more reasons behind Carney's toughening posture. America was perhaps actively promoting secessionist forces in the nation's Alberta province. The Canadian and British leaders' trips are the first in at least 8 years, while the visit by Ireland's Prime Minister Martin was the first in 14 years to China. Countries that shunned China for the last few years due to COVID and its trade dispute with the United States, or have sided with Washington in its war of hegemony with Beijing, are now sending their leaders for meetings with President Xi and are keen to strike business deals again. Almost all of this has to do with President Trump's tariff wars. As the Davos speeches of Macron, Merz, and Ursula von der Leyen exemplify, Europe is reassessing its America ties on economic and security concerns. The China pivot is part of that pragmatic realization. This might not yet be a strategic pivot. These visits might just reflect managed selective resets under the weight of rising US policy uncertainty, but opens up tremendous lateral space for Chinese diplomacy coming out of COVID isolation. From disengagement to China +1 to re-engagement. This is exactly what the doctor ordered for a hemmed-in Beijing. Irony of the pivot. Like India, the UK, Canada, both count the United States as their largest trading partner, yet are forced to engage with Beijing. In a way, it's tragic, for this recalibration crosses over from values-based alliance to one which is purely transactional, hedging of bets. For those who painstakingly built those bridges of trust, diplomacy, people, and nurtured sinews of trade based on those values, are left to look for alternatives. The Canadian delegation to Beijing was carrying burner phones over fears of hacking by the Chinese. That's the level of trust or mistrust. But still, in the case of Europe, it has been particularly painful for obvious reasons. This might still not be China at the expense of the United States. There is clarity among Europe's leaders that China is a three-legged problem. It is a rival, a competitor, and a partner, all at the same time. But post the Greenland fiasco, every leader in Europe has realized that slightly less reliance on the United States, even as not total reliance on China, is not a bad idea. Just enough of a swing to send a message to DC to stop swinging this wrecking ball. And aren't we seeing the impact already? Past fortnight, the EU leadership was chief guest at the Republic Day event, and the mother of all deals was announced in New Delhi. Complete with ceremonial pomp and state banquets, the pictures from Raisina and Kartavya Path perhaps gave such FOMO to DC that the call Lutnick said PM Modi never made finally came from Trump. India and the United States agreed for the trade deal that pegs reciprocal tariffs at 18% against the punitive 50% before. Also, headlines miss the very important fact of President Trump not mentioning India-Pakistan ceasefire in his post or since. Also, the statement from the State Department after Marco Rubio's meeting with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on the sidelines of Pax Silica Summit in Washington had Quad back on the agenda. And while on Pax Silica, remember those pictures of failed Marshal Asim Munir hawking rare earth minerals at the White House? Guess what? Pakistan was absent from the minerals summit of the Trump administration. Things finally seem to be back on an even keel insofar as the India-United States relationship is concerned. Elsewhere, the two dog sleds are idling with no signs of American GIs. All is quiet on the Western Front. You get the drift. We move on to the next one.
I propose to provide tax holiday till 2047 to any foreign company that provides cloud services to customers globally by using data center services from India. It will, however, need to provide services to Indian customers through an Indian reseller entity.
This was India making that big leap of faith on the nuts and bolts of the Industrial Revolution 5.0, with Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announcing a 21-year tax holiday till 2047 for foreign companies setting up data centers in India. Artificial intelligence technologies are built on the foundation of energy-guzzling compute power. The humongous data that gets generated needs giga-scale storage. Global data center capacity stands at about 125 gigawatts today and is expected to double by 2030. India, which generates roughly 20% of world's data with its 1 billion plus internet users, is woefully short on storage capacity. At about 1.5 gigawatts in the present, it is less than 1% of the world. This means that about 95% of India's data is stored beyond our borders. Imagine all those Zoom meetings, all those WhatsApp messages, all those FaceTime calls get stored on servers and data centers abroad. This is both a national security issue and a business opportunity. It is this equation that Sitharaman's budget proposal seeks to plug. The tax holiday positions data centers as a central pillar of India's digital infrastructure, aimed at transforming the country into a global hub for AI and cloud computing. This might translate into a US $200 billion economic injection in the near term, but more of it later. In an unrelated but connected development, the Supreme Court of India slammed big tech firms for their unyielding approach to data privacy of Indian citizens. Coming down heavily on WhatsApp and its parent Meta, the court instructed them to give an undertaking that the user data won't get shared for commercial purposes so as to compromise citizen privacy. In question was the policy sign-up of WhatsApp, which provides a fait accompli to users, take it or leave it. The privacy policy was censured by the Competition Commission of India in 2024. and upheld by the National Company Law Appellate Tribunal in 2025, and landed up in the top court by way of an appeal by the American corporation. The court was scathing in its observations. Quote, "You are making a mockery of the Constitution of this country," unquote. Describing the policy as a decent way of committing theft of private information, the Chief Justice of India, Suryakant, remarked, "You cannot play with the right of privacy of this country in the name of data sharing." Imagine the number of officials, defense forces personnel, scientists, researchers, academics using apps like Zoom, Google Meets, WhatsApp, Facebook, and all that data getting wired abroad. And this week showed it is not an India-specific problem. French authorities raided offices of Elon Musk-owned X in Paris as part of a child abuse and deepfake content probe. Parallelly, Britain's privacy watchdog launched an investigation into Grok over the processing of personal data and its potential to produce harmful sexualized images and video content. In signs of the strained transatlantic ties, the Paris prosecutors dramatically left their perch on X and asked their followers to join them on other social media platforms, after posting that the searches were to make X comply with French laws. The searches came a week after announcement by the French government that it had decided to jettison apps like Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, WhatsApp as communication tools by 2027. The French authorities want all French citizens to move to data-sovereign applications like Visio, and a phase-out, phase-in plan is being worked out. There is an ideological slant also to the probe. It was opened last year following a lawmaker's complaint that algorithms of X were promoting Holocaust denial and other anti-Semitic content, which is a crime under the French law. Musk's algorithm is not just under scrutiny in France and England. The European Commission, in fact, fined X Euro 120 million in December for violating the Digital Services Act, citing misleading blue check badges and obstruction to data access by researchers. The geopolitical setting can hardly be missed. As we saw in the last segment, Donald Trump's wrecking ball against Europe has awakened the conscience of many European countries. The China pivot is only one part of the larger thought of reducing their dependencies on the United States. Data sovereignty is one big focus now. The French government not only wants its citizens to not use American platforms, but also to host the data on homegrown servers and data centers. There's a special certification, Secnum Cloud, from the French National Cybersecurity Agency, which labels the software as sovereign secure. If a product has that label, it means that the data is not subject to extraterritorial US laws. But look at the irony here too. When the French prosecutor announced that they were leaving X, they migrated to LinkedIn and Instagram, both platforms owned by American corporations, Microsoft and Meta respectively. So the choice for the time being is between the devil and the deep sea, or one American corporation and other. The French, like us in India, or the rest of the world, live on American digital life support. The operating systems, office suites, the instant messaging services, all have created a systemic dependence on the United States and its tech giants. Trying to dislodge these tools would not be easy. As for the French, so for us. A strategic dependence on external infrastructure weakens their state in the event of a diplomatic or commercial conflict. The Europeans have come to dread the administrative paralysis that Trump can cause if he chooses to, through the American big tech. It's a tech legend now as to how tech bro Musk made his strategy screens before Ukrainian generals go blank midway through the Russia war by switching off Starlink briefly to make the Kiev government pay up on pending dues. Howsoever briefly, that episode underscored the power that the big tech, and through them, the American government can wield in times of crisis. Wiser world is democratizing. Maybe not fast enough, but for sure. That's what Nirmala Sitharaman's proposal on data centers does. Thanks for watching.